Hello guys, good morning and good evening to everyone who has joined us from all across the world. Thank you for joining and welcome to this Designers Life plus Detox session. So at Designers, we design learning experiences. So we let you guys jumpstart and kickstart your career in UI UX designing. And we have had this vision since 2016. So our alumni consists of design enthusiasts all across different countries, India, US, Australia, New Zealand, and Bangladesh. We provide courses for digital interaction, designing for VR as well as AR, UX writing, and many more specialization courses. So we have trained more than 1600 plus individuals, and our aim is to spawn the next million designers in India. DETAUX is a community initiative by designers. One of the main reasons why we started with DETAUX was to ensure that all the members of a community get real industry exposure and learn directly from the designers who are working in the industry so that they become industry ready. So today we have Luis with us, who is a design advocate at Figma, and he has surely had an interesting journey till now, and he will give his own insights from his journey. So without any further time, I would hand it over to Lu.
Hi, everybody. Hello, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. My name is Luis Ouriach. I'm a design advocate for Figma, and on Twitter you can find me at DiscoLu. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the designer's workflow in 2020. As you can imagine, the world is in a very different place at the moment than it was last year, even 6 months ago. And the workflow for a designer and your typical processes have changed significantly this year, but also last year and the past 2 or 3 years in particular. A little bit about me before I jump into the talk. I graduated in a degree called BA New Media from Leeds in England, and I can talk to you about that degree in length at another time. It's very boring. We covered lots of things. And as I was graduating, I managed to find myself an internship in London, and that was as a web designer. I worked there for a few years before jumping through a series of different industries. I've worked in e-commerce, charity, publishing, startups, hospitality, lots of industries. And that has taken me from London to Sydney, Australia, and also back to London, where I find myself now working for Figma. I run a newsletter you can find that on lionswritten.co.uk. I send that out every Sunday and it's called Milk No Sugar. I run a blog called 8 Pixel Mag, which is a Medium publication. And I also have a podcast called The Noise Pod. Although these probably don't seem that important at the moment, without these things, I would not be in the position I am now. I would not be talking to you on this Sunday. I would not be working for Figma. These three initiatives in particular, but also lots of other things that I've been doing in my spare time, have all contributed to my career progression and pushed me forward to the direction to put me in this seat now. With regards to Figma, it may be a surprise, but Figma actually started in 2011. And this just gives you the sort of scale that building a successful business takes. They started in 2011, just two guys coding away in their bedrooms. And it took 4-5 years to build a product that they were happy with to release to the community. So in 2015, they'd been working away really, really hard, and they'd been able to get to a point where they were satisfied with the product they'd built, released it to the community, and that's when Figma, as we know it today, really started to propel itself forward. And today, we're really, really proud to have these kind of companies listed on our books. Figma's core values are be bold, foster inclusivity, and have fun. As I'm sure you can all imagine, these all spark images of a really cohesive and culturally encouraging community and culture within the business. It stretches not only with our employees and the teams that we have across the world. We're in San Francisco, we're in London, we're in Amsterdam, but also within the wider Figma community as well. Figma's a massive part of Figma's success up until now has been the community that's driving it. We have an amazing amount of designers that are in the wild, running their own Figma events, publishing their own plugins, publishing their own files. And it's that inclusivity within the community that has allowed Figma to thrive up until now. Our main goal is something that is very, very ambitious, but we believe we're going to get there. And that is that design and good ideas can come from anybody. This is something I personally find resonates massively with me. Working as a designer for a number of years, I was never shying away from allowing anybody to have an opinion on my design work or to say that they had a good idea. Just because I or you have a designer in your job title does not mean that you are the last person who can have a say on an idea or initiative. Design ideas can come from anybody. We're all users and we all experience the world in our own way. And that means that we can have different perspectives with regards to user interface work or user experience work. And that's what we're trying to drive forward as well. So the landscape at the moment, so just prepare yourself for this next slide because it's going to be overwhelming. These are the amount of design tools. Well, not all of them. These are a lot of the design tools that you can possibly have at the moment as a designer, as you go through the process from free-form files, design, feedback, versioning, prototyping, handover, and documentation. And as you can imagine, this is overwhelming. This, for a designer, thinking about not only cost, but also the amount of licenses you have to manage, the amount of tools you have to be logged into, and all the things that you're just managing as an individual, as a team, as an organization, it can become too much. And this is where Figma wanted to change that. So we came up with our product idea of, well, maybe all of those things can live in one place. And that might sound mad to the average person, which I can understand why you'd want to go down that route. But we're getting to the point where we're looking at having all of our design work in one place, all of our files in one place, all of our design libraries, all of our components, all of our plugins, images, one place. That's where we're trying to end up. And we've made some significant strides towards getting to that goal. So when we come back to our layout here, we can see we've got these tabs at the top. These are all the different things that we're trying to manage. We get to the point where we then end up having all of these, where we can feed into Figma as one individual source of truth, one individual tool to try and satisfy all of your design process needs. As I said, it's ambitious, it's a big goal, but we are making some really significant progress towards getting there. Now, I'm going to jump into the tool and I'm going to show you. So let's think about freeform. Freeform is anything from doing loose sketches, having whiteboarding sessions, drawing around with the team. Maybe it's on pen and paper, maybe it's on a sticky note, maybe it's in the tool. There's an amazing plugin called Pencil Pal, which I'll open now, you can see. And this is living in within our community. We have a community which is currently is in beta, but it's been rolled out to everybody to access. And within here, we have plugins and we have files that allow you to stretch your design process. So if I jump into our slides here and find where we are, jump into freeform, I'm going to right click, open my plugins and open Pencil Pal. So if I just move this over to the left hand side, open my pencil tool, I can resync this, change the color, change the stroke. I can do some loose exploratory work. Maybe I want to draw a little wireframe of something very quickly. I can do that exploratory work within the Figma canvas, within one tool, not having to leave, not having to buy another piece of software. So although I'm showing this very quickly and it's a very crude example, this is the sort of fidelity that you can get within our tool that allows you to do lots of other things within one place. Right, back to the presentation. And here's my lovely work. Typically, you would, if you're working in a tool, maybe like Sketch or something else like that, you would have to have the license for your tool. You'd have to have a license for your hosting of your design files. You'd need to have a tool that manages your handoff and your version control. But within Figma, this is an organization plan that I have open here for our demos. And you can see that I have all these files inside my projects, inside my teams, inside my organization. So I don't need to leave anywhere. I don't need to have lots of Finder or Windows tabs open. I don't need to explore through my computer to find where things are stored. They're all living within one place. I can create, I can edit, I can duplicate, and I can share the content between these individual files live within one place. I know you're probably noticing this is in the browser. Figma works within the browser. You can see we've got our URL here. If I click onto my team here, the URL changes. I can share that with people. I can invite people to things. I can lock down permissions. But I can also use the desktop app. So we have a sophisticated desktop app which allows you to work on a feature mapped one-to-one basis to things that are in the browser. And back to the next point is design. So obviously, as you can imagine, we have the ability to do your design work within Figma. So if I just close this plugin, I'm going to create what we call a frame. Frame is an equivalent to an artboard that you may have used to in something like Sketch or Adobe XD. And I can come and change that to a preset, for example. Maybe I'm using an iPhone, just create a fill in here. And within here, as you can imagine, you can create all your different design elements. I maybe want to create a tab bar for my iPhone work, very simply. And then maybe I'm going to create an article in here so I can have my article card. And then I would have my image, which I can select from here as an example. And then, as you'd expect, when I can type, you can come in, change your fonts, do all the usual stuff that you'd expect from a design tool, and create other things like components. So components are really where your designs are going to be coming to life. This is where you're going to be supercharging your work to allow you to work a lot closer with product managers, with developers, and to make sure that the work you're designing within the design tool is a lot more closely aligned with what's going to be built when you're coding up. So to create components, I've created a single frame in here. Let's do a very simple button. I'm going to call this read the article. Really can't type today. And I can select my frame here. I'm going to rename this to button and add something what we call auto layout, which allows you to respond. I'm just going to add a little stroke in here so we can see. I can change the setting to auto. I can change the padding around these individual elements. So you can see that the button is responding when I change this information in here. If I want that to be full width, I can change that to vertical. I can come and center that. Center the text. And then we have our button, very simple button as you can see. I'm just going to give it a little color and change the text. And then what I would do then with my button is I would then want to publish that as a library and publish that as a component. So I can select my button and I can turn that into a component. You can see on the left hand side the icon has changed. And then what I can then do is publish that as a library. That would then allow that component to be accessible across my entire organization for people who have permissions, and they can absorb those components and work independently with them as well. The next level to this one is that if I want to create an instance of that component, which is a copy, I can drag a copy out like this, and you see the icon changes slightly, but I can still come in, I can still make changes to that one. I can change the background color if I want to, and I can also change the text. Well, I can spell as well. This is a very quick example to show you that within Figma, components and instances work slightly different to other tools in that you have full control over the styling, the copy, the colors, that sort of thing, the design library styles. So you're not locked down to just this main component and have that being the one rule that you have to work everywhere. You can have different versions and different instances that you're publishing and populating throughout the other side of the design process. Next part is feedback. Now, as you can imagine, the feedback is a significant part of the design process. Whether it is having sessions in person when we're allowed to, having Zoom calls, team calls, meet calls where you have to get feedback with your team. I can invite people into this file. So if I tap share in the right hand side, I can invite somebody by email and I'll be able to see them, work with them live within this file in one place, and we wouldn't have to have external tools or working independently in other places. The best way to demonstrate that the value of feedback really, I suppose, is to use the comment feature, which I'll come in and you can see if I tap C on my keyboard, I get a slightly different cursor. If I also open up the prototype or the presentation, I can also tap C on the keyboard. You see my cursor changes. I can come in, I can add a comment, I can mention somebody as well. So I can say, this is my great comment. I can add some emojis if I like to. I can post that. You see we've got that posted in here. If I then jump back to my file, so I've got my comment in here, move it to this artboard, jump back to my comments. I can also add comments in here, so I can add them myself if I want to. And then come back to the presentation. You can see we've got our comments in here. I can select this comment here. I can copy the link to that. So what I could do in a very theoretical example is copy that link, send it to my product managers and say, hey, here's some feedback I'd like you to give me. This is the particular frame that I'm working on, or artboard or component, and you can work one-to-one between the prototype mode and the editor mode. You're probably wondering if you could just share this version to somebody, just share the presentation, just share the prototype. You can do that. Come up to the top right hand corner, we've got share prototype here too. I can copy that link and I can send to somebody I can manage the access if I want to as well. And I can just lock down those permissions in there. So you can see I've got those comments replicated in here. I will be working within the file. My engineer or my product manager will be working in the prototype, and we can have that conversation back and forth. When I'm happy with that, I can come in, I can resolve that comment. That gets wiped from the canvas. Next part of this feedback is if you want to take it to the next level, there's a very good tool in the community by a company called Mixpanel, and they've created this feedback kit, which I would encourage you to check out. And within here, they've got some very good examples of how you can do collaborative sessions with your team within one single Figma file. This allows you, if you're a user researcher, for example, I noticed on the guest list there are lots of user researchers. They've got an amazing template kit in here that you can come in and see and work alongside your colleagues to do some real detailed user research work. With regards to versioning, so as you can imagine, version histories are massively important to the design process. They're massively important to any process. As a designer, you probably want to make sure that you have locked down your versions. You want to share a version, you want to roll back work if you want to. And to access that, you jump into the top panel and go to show version history. Within here, you can see that I've got all my different versions from today, and I can copy on these. I can copy the link to share with them. This links back to the comment method that I showed you earlier, where you can collaborate with your team in regards to comments and copying links to each other. You can also do the same with version history. I can copy that link, share it to my team. I can continue to work within here, and they will see a particular version. If you want to lock down that a little bit more, I can tap on this icon on the top right-hand corner called Add to Version History. And this will allow me to lock something down a lot tighter. So I can say, this is for the DETAUX community. Save that. And you see we've got a label in here. I can copy that link, send it to all of you, and you can see this version of the file. I can continue to work within there independently. Next part of the design process, prototyping. So I'm just going to exit version history and create a new page in here. And I'm going to show you something pretty quick. So with regards to prototyping, I want to create maybe a very simple iPhone prototype. I'm going to create my tab bar again like I did before. And I'm going to have something very simple where we have something growing and interacting between each other. Let's say I have my very simple article card in here. I can then add what would I presume would be your image. And then I'm going to put my headline in here. So these are all going to be grouped together. I will then duplicate this frame. Maybe I want this to be a bit bigger. I want the headline to be down here. I want my image to be full width. And I want this to have the stroke, just to make sure they're the same. And this is going to be here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that when I tap on this article card, I go into my prototype mode. I want to have an interaction on here. So I can make it so when I tap it, I direct myself to another screen, which is this one here. We have a bunch of animation presets in here that you can use. But what I'm going to use is something called Smart Animate. And what that should do, if this works out, is it's going to blend the shapes into each other. You're going to see things move across the screen. I can also change the presets for the animation styles. I'm just going to use ease out at the moment, but I can also have custom, where you can come and change the Bezier handles if you want a bit more finite control over your animations. Ease out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open prototype mode. And this should now, so if I click on the canvas, you'll see that I have this hotspot that I can click. If I click that, this now blends into the previous one. So it's going to do that again, return back home, click on here, you can see that we've blended there, we've got shapes moving around the screen. And in a very simple way, I've just quickly shown you how you can use Figma prototyping to do some pretty complex stuff in about 10 seconds. And that's the speed that we want to be working in as designers, as people who are moving ideas through the pipeline to get things moving pretty quickly. So next part is handover. Very important. What I'm going to do is create another little button. We like buttons here. and I'm going to add some text inside. And then what I'm going to do is turn those into an auto layout again, so we can have that responsive control. I'm just going to add some border radius to make it pretty. And then with what I'm going to essentially show you here is rename this into my button again and turn that into a component by selecting the icon at the top. And then I'm going to jump into the inspect panel. This is the place where you as a designer will be encouraging your developers to look in, and they will come in and they will see your work. They don't need to pay for a license for this, by the way. This is a free part of the tool. They can enter inspect mode and they can see that I've got my button component here. They can see the dimensions of that button. If I select on my text, you can see we have all of these text properties that are listed in the right-hand side, either in a list format, which I can copy. I can paste that onto the canvas and change the color so you can see it. So your developer can come in, copy those CSS properties, paste them into the code, and you're going to be moving pretty quickly. Similarly with the components, if I want to just have a very fixed button, for example, they can come in and see the width of that, they can see the height of that, etc., etc. They can see the background color, and that is being represented there. Alternatively, although this is a very simple example, the button might be something more aligned to button/primary. And then you may have another button which is something like button/secondary. So this is a component at the moment, this button primary. You see that I've created an instance of my button, and I'm going to turn that into a new component. And then I'll show you that on the left-hand side, we have our nested components here. This is then going to be changed into button/secondary. And I'm going to override those properties from the original one and make them like so. If I then click on my component, enter inspect mode, you can see we have our button secondary listed out here. Your developers can see that there's a matching between their code library and your design library, and you can be a lot more satisfied with how you're getting things through the pipeline. The next one, with regards to Handover, is a plugin called Status Annotations. I'm just going to open this one for you. This is a plugin actually my colleague Tom made, and it's really useful to show you as somebody viewing your design file what stage of the process you're going through. So if I just jump back to here, let's say I want to make it so that this slide in particular is not ready for approval. I'm going to open my Status Annotations plugin, drag this down here, select my frame, and then say this one's in progress. And we see on the top right corner, we've got this in progress label. So when a developer or a product manager, whoever you're collaborating with, comes into the file, they can see that this one is not quite ready. The one before, however, is complete. And the one before that is in develop mode. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that we've got these little labels on the top right-hand corner of each of our frames that allows your team to see what stage of the process you're in at which point. So that's the sort of very quick skimming of Handover. There's so much more to that we could dive into with regards to styles. Actually, I might just show you. I think we've got time, so I'll show you. So if I create I'm going to create a very simple rectangle in here. I'm going to show you how to do layer styles that allows your developers to see something a lot simpler. So I've got my fill here. Let's make that red, and I can come in. See on here we've got color styles, and I can create my color styles. So I'm going to call this alert. Actually, firstly, I'm going to call it red. Then we have our red style in here. This might not be too useful, because if I create another color and call this one new style called red dark. These are just random styles that I've got in here. If I show you another one, if I just call this green, we just got a bunch of colors that don't have any representation. They're not grouped. They don't give you any indication of what their usage is. So the way we can take this to the next level is by creating what we call groups. So I'm going to make this slightly different and create what we call a group. So that's using / naming conventions, which I think a bunch of you will be used to if you're using other tools like Sketch or Adobe XD or Frame or something like that. And I'm going to call this pastel / red. You can see that's now been grouped into a little group called pastel. I create a copy of this and do another example. This one's going to be pastel/yellow. Create that style, and we see we've got a group here. You can see that the more styles you create, the more this naming, this grouping is going to become more useful. You're going to get into a situation where maybe you have colors for your brand, colors for your links, colors for your alerts, colors for your buttons, and these will all be able to be stored down there like so. I can also change the display of those, and I can search for them as well. So when you get into the stage where you've got hundreds of colors that you're building, you can come in and be really organized with those too. Similarly for typography, if I create a type in here, placeholder text, and change the color so you can see, I can either have my styles as vanilla like this, or I can create text styles too. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing. This one's going to be headline small. You can see I've got my headlines here. The difference between text styles within Figma and other tools is that I can duplicate that, and I can change the alignment of this text style. So I've still got headline small selected. I can center that, and I can change the color. So we've still got both headline small selected, but you don't have to create a new text style to create some new properties that live within that text style like so. And again, we're using that grouping, using that / naming convention to encourage the grouping between your properties. So next one, documentation. This is something that is massive, something that I firmly believe in myself as being really important for the design process, but also can be quite scary. And a lot of people don't really know where to start with regards to documentation. I'm just going to use a few examples from something that we had before. So if I copy over my buttons into this frame, what I can do is use something. Just in the first instance, you might want to do something like redlining. If I open this redlines plugin, you see this allows you to have different spacing, and it shows you in sort of very simple terms what your designs look like for your developers coming in to see it. Oops. So if I right click on my plugins and open my redlines, move this out of the way and select my button here, I can select this one. You can see immediately we've got that height listed there. We've got the width. I can do the same with the text if I want to. And so the benefit of this is being really quick with your redlining. So we've got these two buttons here. If I open that again, select them. We can do exactly the same thing with both of those. And we can have things like outlines on both of them. There's lots of different things that you can do with regards to your redlining. You can go to town with all of these features. So as your developers are coming in and saying, hey, this button we've got, what's the width of that one? What's the size of the text? You can do something like redlining to allow you to bring that closer to home. Just going to copy that button over again to show you the next level of documentation. So we have our components here. And what I didn't show you before was that we have a description field on the right-hand side. And this is something that I encourage all of you to make use of. It's something that can become very important for your developers when they're looking at your work, to make sure that there's no differences between what you expect and what is delivered. Within here, I can say button. I can put BTN. I can do iOS. I can say this is our large button. And then I can also reference libraries. So maybe this is our React is BTN/large. And then when I, as a developer, come into the file, jump into the inspect panel, you can see we've got all of these usage guidelines on the right-hand side. And that just takes away that conversation of, hey, what button are we using? What version is it? Is this for iOS or Android or web? Is this for our React library or our other libraries that we're using? Maybe you're using Flutter or something. That takes that question out of the conversation. And you can hand it over to the developers knowing full well that they're going to be very successful when they build your product. This works in exactly the same way for colors and typography. So I'll just quickly show you that too. If I take my color from before, my red color, as we know, this is not very useful when we're looking at this one. So I'm going to edit that style and I'm going to change that to alert/red. And then at the end, what I want to do is encourage the use of tokens between my designs and my developers. So maybe in your developer libraries, you're using tokens, or using Sass or CSS variables, in which case I can come in and I can say alert red. This might look like garbage to the average designer, but when you're building the products out, this can become very useful. And if I inspect that again, you can see we've got down here, I've got my alert/red, which is our readable value for our designers, but our developers can see this token alert red. And that makes you just close that gap a lot quicker. Similarly with typography, if I come back into my style, I can edit this one and I can say, this is our headline small. If I then jump back into the inspect panel, you can see in this typography declaration here, we've got our headline small. Similarly down here in the comments. So again, developers can come in, see your work, be so much more confident with the fact that they're closing the gap between their libraries they're building and their components and props and primitives and all that sort of stuff, and all the work you're doing as a designer within your file. There's so much more that we can talk about with regards to documentation. There's some fantastic products that are also being built. For example, there's one called Zeroheight, which is pretty good, and that allows you to have your documentation living publicly with regards to your Figma components being synced up with your code components. And I can show you an example like so. So if I open this one up, you can see that somebody has built this design system here, and they have all of their components on the left hand side. We've got our buttons here. So you could be syncing your Figma components to something like Zeroheight. Your developers can see that, or even your external stakeholders can come in and see that in a public way. And there's so many more tools like that. Zeroheight is one of them. There's another tool called Storybook, which is very good for your developers, and you can also have a Figma integration with that as well. That's documentation covered. Thank you very much.
I hope that the session was really great, guys. Thanks a lot, Luis. It was really great to have this session. Thanks a lot. If there are any more questions, you can contact us on our email IDs and our phone number that is being displayed on your screen. I hope that you enjoyed this DETAUX session. And if you have any other suggestions, do mail us or contact us. And I'll see you in the next one.